Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Was a Demigod in the Justice League, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Yes, a burrito with extra cheese. Yes, the top floor. The name is Diana Prince. Placing her smartphone on the coffee table in her spacious living room, Wonder Woman focused on drying off her wet hair with a head towel. She had just come out of the shower, proof of that also being that there was only a white towel wrapped around her torso. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang and she left her head towel on the backrest of the sofa as she sat up and went to open the door. "Good evening, ma'am. Here's your..." The delivery boy's words died in his throat 2 seconds after that door opened. "Good evening. Is there a problem?" Wonder Woman asked, completely oblivious. "And no," he said, his face quickly becoming as red as an apple. Long black hair, wet, barely out of the shower, striking blue eyes, defined cheekbones, full lips and a body even a model would be envious of. A body wrapped in only a white towel that strained to contain her voluptuous breasts and left her soft shoulders and strong yet still feminine thighs and legs bare. In truth, the costume she wore on a daily basis in public while fighting crime did not cover much more than a bath towel, but there was a stark difference in the atmosphere surrounding her at that time and in the present. Till the very end of the transaction, the delivery boy fumbled very flusteredly. He almost dropped the package with food when he handed it to her and, after getting her money, he bolted away, forgetting to give her the change. But he turned around after a few seconds, his face even redder than before, boiling, upon realizing his mistake. Wonder Woman giggled softly. "It's all right, you can keep the change. Thank you and have a nice evening," she said with a smile and waved in goodbye. She may have been oblivious in the first few seconds, but Wonder Woman was not stupid. She realized the reason for the boy's embarrassment. After starting to live as Diana Prince among regular people, she began to understand how big was the effect of her physical appearance on most men. "What I don't get is why almost everyone acts like that when I'm Diana Prince but nobody shows any reaction in front of Wonder Woman. Scenes like the previous one when men became starstruck were not really that common, hence her amusement, but it was a fact that dozens of men had tried to hit on Diana Prince during the past few months since she adopted this civilian identity, yet hardly anyone seemed to like Wonder Woman as a woman. Maybe it's because Wonder Woman looks like an untouchable being, powerful and dangerous, while Diana Prince is a normal but attractive and rich human girl. What Wonder Woman was completely unaware of was that her hero persona was way more popular with men, and not only, than her civilian identity. It was just that nobody would dare to express their honest thoughts in front of someone who could bend steel with her bare hand and throw cars around like they were pebbles. If she had browsed the internet for even as little as 2 minutes, typing Wonder Woman in the search engine, she would have seen how different the situation was. But she had never done that. She did not know about the hundreds of blogs dedicated to worshipping Wonder Woman or about the existence of websites like Rule 34. With these idle thoughts, Wonder Woman came back to the living room and, after plopping herself down on the sofa, she grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Then, she opened the paper bag and grabbed the burrito from it. She took a huge, very unladylike bite from her burrito and an expression of bliss appeared on her face. What looked like an enormous ship of alien invaders appeared above Jump City. Wonder Woman put her burrito down for a moment with a dissatisfied expression and changed the channel. Everyone is asking the same question: who is the newly emerged hero? The princess expression darkened and she changed the channel once more. The Justice League has yet to release a statement in regards to the previous incident, so we don't know what exactly had transpired, the host of the show on TV said, but one of his partners interrupted him. "Nonsense. It's as clear as day that he's a hero. Everyone saw and heard that hologram of the spaceship's commander. Those alien freaks would have destroyed the entire city if they hadn't found their allegedly dangerous prisoner. This new hero saved millions of people that night in Jump City and with no collateral damage at that. If that ain't what being a hero means, then I don't know what is." Her face now scrunched up in annoyance, Wonder Woman changed the channel again. It was a music channel this time. A large group of women dressed in a bikini and other types of promiscuous outfits were dancing on the beach while 2 men were singing. "Bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. Bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks." Lick on these nuts and suck the die. 1. Suddenly, the sound of a crash was heard when the remote control was slammed into the large flat screen of the TV, cracking it beyond recognition. A small vein was pulsating on the temple of Wonder Woman. Men. All men are the same, she said in anger, but she closed her eyes and breathed out in an attempt to regain her composure. No, there are good people among men too, she conceded in her mind once she calmed herself down a little. It had been almost 1 year since she had come to the man's world, and she had seen in her fellow members of the Justice League that men were not all that bad. At least not all were as bad as she had been taught to believe. There were also brave, honest, noble and self-sacrificing characters among them. But they are a minority. The average men out there. She let out a long sigh and massaged her temples with her hands. Since the Justice League's clash against the alien mercenary in Jump City and the Gordanian ships following destruction, the Earth had been thrown into an uproar. Her level of stress and her worries were off the charts. Videos of the incident in Jump City spread on the internet like wildfire. The videos did not contain scenes of Naruto's clash against the Justice League because all the civilians evacuated the area after Coriander went on a rampage, but they all contained the scene of a man glowing in yellow and red light, almost like an angel, annihilating the enormous half-a-mile-long alien spaceship. In the general population's eyes, he was a newly emerged hero. They had no idea that he had fought against the Justice League at first. That said, the entire Justice League was very rattled by the incident. Batman hid in his Batcave and has not spoken to anyone ever since. Jon Stewart was summoned to Green Lantern Corps HQ in an urgent fashion, and Wonder Woman herself just stayed at home all day, in her apartment, eating junk food and hiding from the crazed reporters. The rest of the Justice League did the same too, but after seeing the huge disparity of power between them and the alien, Wonder Woman, in particular, was almost starting to question her abilities. Of what use had it been that she had trained for thousands of years as an Amazon when someone could just obliterate everything in their path with a snap of their fingers? But she was stopped from continuing that line of thought when the doorbell rang again. Who could it be at this hour? It was already past 10 p.m. It was night. Furthermore, she had no real friends or social life outside the Justice League, and if they wanted to contact her, Martian Manhunter would have done it through their comms or even telepathy. There was no need to come all the way to her apartment. But when she looked through the door's peephole, a startled cry came out of her mouth. Mother. Asterism. Long blonde hair, blue eyes, and wearing a white robe and a golden tiara on her head, it was none other than Hippolyta, the Queen of the Amazons and Wonder Woman's mother. We haven't seen each other in so long. Don't I get a hug from my daughter? Hippolyta said. Wonder Woman embraced her mother tightly and she took her hands in hers after she broke the hug. What brings you here? Does a mother need a reason to visit her child? Hippolyta asked teasingly. You've never visited me before, and I. Wonder Woman trailed off. For a little while, mother and daughter became silent. Due to their laws, as the Queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta had to exile her own daughter even despite the fact that she had broken those laws for the sake of saving their lives. Because of that, Wonder Woman could not visit her mother and her fellow Amazon sisters even if she wanted. Yesterday night, while I was in meditation, I sensed an incredible magic power. It was like the power of a god. I've come to the man's world because I was worried about you. We met a very powerful foe. The strongest we've ever faced. He defeated the entire Justice League effortlessly. We could not do anything against him. If he had been evil, I don't know how many of us would have been alive now. Hearing Diana's words, Hippolyta took her in her arms and embraced her again. My little stars and sun, she said lovingly. Mother. Diana also said and hugged her back. They were warriors, born for battle, and they were both several thousand years old, but when it was just the two of them, Diana and Hippolyta were not Wonder Woman and the Queen of the Amazons but just a daughter and a mother that loved each other dearly. It's time I told you the truth, something I've hidden from you since forever, Hippolyta said, and then she took out a pendant from her neck. An incantation spoken in an ancient Greek language came out of her mouth and the pendant started glowing with dark blue light, coating the entire living room with its color. This is a very powerful spell, one that was cast upon this medallion by your father himself. For a short while, no one will be able to see or hear what is happening in this room. My father? Diana asked in a strange voice. What do you mean? You said you sculpted me from clay and the gods of Olympus themselves blessed me with life and their powers. Oh, the gods did bless you with their powers after you were born. But they did not give you life. I gave you life, together with your father. This. Wonder Woman was at a loss, unable to find her words. She was almost 3,000 years old. For 3 millennia, she believed that she had been made from clay. That was also why her devotion to the gods was so intense. Because she believed that everything she was because of the gods. But now, her mother suddenly told her that that had been a lie from the beginning. Why did you lie to me? All this time, Diana said in agitation. I did it to protect you. To protect you from those that would have wanted to kill you if they had known about your true origins. Who would have wanted to kill me? Who would have even been able to? The Amazons are under the protection of the gods. Diana said. You and I both saw how much protection the gods gave us when Faust had turned everyone to stone. The gods, they do not care about the Amazons that way. We are expendable. Just tools that they can use as they see fit. If we broke, they would just create another set of tools to replace us. In front of the gods, mortals mean nothing. Mother, Wonder Woman shouted scandalized. What Hippolyta had just said could very well be considered as blasphemy against the gods. It was the first time that Wonder Woman had ever seen her mother speak like that about the gods and wearing that expression of bitterness on her face. You've ever wondered why the Amazons were punished to guard the gates of Tartarus for eternity? Hippolyta asked. Was it not because you aided Hades and the Titans in their battle against the gods of Olympus? Diana replied. But why would Hades, Zeus' brother, try to plot against him by siding with the Titans? And why would we, the Amazons, support Hades in his rebellion? Do you really think I was so blindly in love with Hades that I just went along with whatever he wanted without questioning the fate of my people? Hippolyta continued to ask. Seeing her daughter falling silent, she continued. One day, Hades came home while I was bathing and he joined me in. Mother, Diana cried out, her cheeks instantly turning rosy in embarrassment. She did not want to hear any details about her mother's shay life. But Hippolyta continued unbothered by her daughter's protests. Like any other couple, we started to make love. But I noticed that the way he was kissing me was different from before. Hades was a gentle lover, very caring and conscious of my needs. But that day, he was acting strangely. Rougher, more dominant, more selfish. I did not like it. However, by the time I realized that something was terribly wrong, it was too late. He had already spilled his seed inside of me. Him being such a quick shot and then teleporting away immediately after that further cemented my suspicions. That man had not been Hades. It had been someone else. Don't tell me. Diana muttered with her hands covering her mouth in disbelief. It was not hard for her to guess what had actually happened. It had been Zeus all along. You know very well the history and how many women he had raped before. In my case, he had not dared to do it openly. He had disguised himself as Hades, who was my lover at that time. Naturally, I did not hide what happened from Hades. You can imagine his and my rage at Zeus. But we could not do anything against him. He is the king of gods for a reason. No one could ever defeat him, except for goddess Athena maybe, one day. Coincidentally, around at that time, the Titans waged war against Olympus. Hades jumped at the chance to get his revenge against Zeus. Though I hated Zeus too for what he did to me, I was reluctant to join him. As the leader of my people, I did not want the Amazons to be embroiled in a war of the gods. But he guilt-tripped me into accepting it, accusing me of colluding with Zeus behind his back. Zeus forcing himself on me that day, it had changed him. He became more taciturn, quick to anger, and always ready to explode. Hades became very different from the man I had once fallen in love with. As for the rest, it is as you know it. The Titans lost the war and Hades was exiled to Tartarus while the Amazons were punished to guard its gates for eternity for having sided with him. A poignant silence followed. I assume Hera would have wanted to kill me if she had known that Zeus cheated on her again. Diana asked. Yes, Hippolyta answered. But if Zeus has one quality, that is that he cares about his children. Together with great Athena, they made a plan. They gave me an enchanted necklace that hid my pregnancy and they also told me to sculpt a baby out of clay. When it was time for you to be born, they pretended to give life to that form of clay. Knowing that, as the daughter of Zeus, your strength would far exceed that of your fellow Amazons, great Athena sealed your powers. To remove any possibility of Hera becoming suspicious even of your sealed strength, Goddess Athena organized a birthday party for the newborn you, a party where she invited the rest of the gods to bless you. Goddess Athena blessed you with her wisdom. Goddess Demeter blessed you with her strength. Goddess Aphrodite blessed you with her beauty. God Hermes blessed you with his ability of flight and speed. Goddess Artemis blessed you to have unity with nature and wild beasts and affinity to fire. Goddess Hestia blessed you with the power to discern the truth. And now, the truth shall set you free. You are Diana, the princess of the Amazons, the daughter of Queen Hippolyta and the king of gods, Zeus. The sound of chains being snapped was heard and an aura of power and nobility burst out from Wonder Woman's body. Had it not been for the powerful spell coming off from the medallion that Zeus had enchanted, just that release of aura would have blasted the top floor of the building to dust. The spell will not hold on for too long, Diana. Hippolyta said urgently. Where are your bracelets? Put them on immediately. Though extremely bewildered by her mother's words and the massive changes she could feel taking place in her body, Diana automatically listened to her mother's words and tried to run to her bedroom where she had left her uniform. Wait, don't move away from this spell's range. Just tell me where they are and I'll get them for you. Not long after that, Hippolyta returned with the bracelets of submission and gave them to her daughter. After she put them around her wrists, Hippolyta said, unless it's a matter of life and death like it was 2 days ago, never take these off. They will continue to suppress and hide your true nature and powers as long as you wear them. Never tell of your identity to anyone, unless you don't have a choice. The moment you take them off, the gods will take notice of you and Hera will learn of your identity as well. An angry and jealous Hera is no less dangerous than her enraged husband. Looking at Diana, who was still silent and had a lost look in her eyes, Hippolyta took her once again in her arms and hugged her to her chest. I'm sorry I had to hide this from you for so long. If I hadn't been afraid I could lose you, I would have never told you the truth. I never cared about how powerful you could be while you were at my side. All I ever wanted was for you to be happy, to be safe and to feel loved. Diana could feel her mother's tears wetting the crook of her neck. She had never seen Hippolyta cry, she had never seen her as vulnerable as that before. Hippolyta broke the hug and she raised her hands to cup her daughter's cheeks, making it so the blue eyes locked on each other. Even though Zeus forced himself on me, I never regretted giving you birth, Diana. I swear this on the river Styx. You are my little stars and sun. You are the joy of my life, my beloved daughter. Never think otherwise. Hearing her mother's pleading and filled with love voice and seeing her tears made Diana's eyes start swimming in tears too. She leaned into her mother's touch and hugged her tightly once more. Though her heart had been shaken by these revelations, the love and respect she had for her mother only increased after learning the truth. That night, Hippolyta did not return to the island of paradise. That night, Wonder Woman, a 3,000 years old woman, a valiant and tough warrior, slept like a vulnerable little girl, curled up in her mother's embrace. In contrast, Hippolyta stayed awake for a long time, watching her daughter sleep. A gentle expression was on her face as she softly caressed Diana's head. The word immense did not do it justice. As he looked at the endless expanse of darkness ahead of him, he could not find a word in his vocabulary to describe its size. In truth, it was way larger than dozens of planetary systems put together, a darkness blacker than the darkest black. His eyes would have not been able to perceive its existence in the first place if it had not been for the accretion disks glowing at its edge. What is this? His voice was shaking. A brave and courageous man, someone who never backed down, someone who had dared to even fight against a god, that man, at that moment, was frozen. A primal fear beyond his reasoning gripped his heart. He could not breathe. In terror, he could not even look away. A thought came to his mind. This is the end. Alarms rang and many warnings appeared on the screen of his computer. The ship began to shake terribly because of the force pulling at it, dragging it away from its trajectory. Snapping out of his trance-like state, he grabbed the controls of the ship in panic and pulled on them, trying to steer the ship away manually. He pressed several buttons and all the engines of the ship blasted at full power. But for all his efforts, the only result was that the ship started shaking even harder and then, with a loud bang, one of the engines superheated and exploded. Kurama. At his call, a yellow and red light came out of his body. He stood up from the pilot's seat and then squatted against the ship's floor. The yellow and red chakra increased in density around him to such a degree that his silhouette became blurry, almost indistinguishable. His legs pushed against the floor with all the power he was capable of, and he launched himself up like an unstoppable rocket. He broke through the reinforced special alloy that the outer walls of his spaceship were made of, straight into the outer space. Now, blast it! Crimson-red chakra burst from the soles of his feet, enveloping the several hundred feet long spaceship below. An enormous explosion boomed when the ship's main ion reactor blew up. That explosion did what the spaceship's engines could not achieve. It propelled him away violently, lessening the pulling force that had taken hold of his being. There was no sign of relief on his face. A tailed beast bomb started to take form in the palm of his hands, and it grew in size until it was as large as a football. But he did not throw it. Where could he have thrown it to? For millions of miles, there was nothing around him. Pressing his palms against it, the tailed beast bomb's spherical form was compressed to that of a plum. Then, it blew up and another violent explosion blasted him away. It was almost as powerful as a small nuclear bomb. In the vacuum of space, those two explosions hurled him to more than 1,000,000 miles away from his initial location. Not enough. It's not enough. Desperation threatened to overwhelm him. He felt like no matter how far he flew, he would not be able to escape. He could not escape from the intangible claws of the devouring demon that had grabbed a hold of him. A shadow clone appeared behind him. But the clone did not have the momentum that the two huge explosions had granted to the original body. In a blink of an eye, the original body had disappeared from the clone's sight. Despite the original body's crazy speed and momentum, it had still not been fast enough to escape the radius of the explosion that followed. The shadow clone killed itself by creating and detonating another tailed beast bomb in his hands, just so the shockwave of the explosion could blast away the original body even further. Terrible explosions with powers no less than that of nuclear bombs appeared like tiny suns as they lighted up, for a brief moment, the ever-present darkness of the void. The repeated shockwaves coming from them were enough to even pulverize some of his internal organs and make him cough up large amounts of blood. But after the explosion of nearly 10 Bayudama, consuming much of his chakra pool, his body gained such an astonishing momentum in the vacuum of space that he had almost reached the speed of light. It was a speed that no one could reach without the aid of a supernatural force protecting their being. With his body wrapped in a dense yellow and red chakra, he looked like a comet as he flew in desperation. But finally, he could feel it. The pulling force from behind was weakening. He was not far from his salvation, the event horizon. Asterism. He woke up with a start. Had half of his body not been petrified, he would have jumped up to his feet. In his condition, he could only grab onto the bedsheets with his still working hand. He noticed that the sheets were soaked with his sweat. Closing his remaining eye, he tried to calm himself down. His heart was beating as if to jump out of his chest. Years had passed from the last time he had had that nightmare. But it was not just a mere dream. Out of the 3,381 missions that Naruto had taken over the past century as an intergalactic mercenary, he had completed 3,380. He had failed only one. It had happened when the events from his nightmare had taken place. A supermassive black hole located very far from the borders of the 3,600 sectors of the universe. It was the closest he had ever come to dying. It was the most terrified he had ever been of something. It was a fear that did not make sense because, normally, Naruto was not afraid of death. It was beyond his understanding, more than his mind could comprehend. 1 hour spent at the very edge of its gravitational pull's range had meant over 50 years in the world outside the event horizon. Though he had completed the actual bounty before the supermassive black hole's gravitation derailed his ship off its course, by the time he returned to show proof of his bounty's completion and collect his reward, the person who had issued the bounty had died of old age. That was why it was counted as a failure. 1 hour under the influence of that supermassive black hole had made him unaging, immortal. He had searched for information about black holes after surviving that incident. In this wide universe, there had been other people too who had stepped beyond the event horizon of a black hole and managed to escape and live to tell the tale. But he had never heard of someone becoming immortal as a result of it. He had also never heard of a black hole of that size before. The largest one recorded reached only the approximate size of a planetary system. To this day, he was convinced that it had not been a natural phenomenon. Someone, must have created that thing. To this day, Naruto had been left with a deep fear of the void. In front of that world-ending black hole, he felt insignificant. Old gods. New gods, what a joke. Who dares to call themselves a god in front of the void? You're awake. A girl's voice made him break out of his thoughts. When he felt the cool sensation of a wet cloth wiping the unpetrified part of his forehead, he opened his eye. A curtain of long red hair appeared in his sight. It was Coriander. A worried look could be seen in her green eyes. Are you okay? She asked, but she realized how stupid her question sounded given that he could not talk and that half of his body had been turned to stone, so she added, will you recover from this? All Naruto could do was make a thumbs-up gesture with his hand. He could not write as he had done with Kyuubi because he did not know the Tamaranine language. Now this is weird, the girl said as she brought her face closer to him and sniffed. The bed and your clothes are wet from how much you sweated, but it doesn't smell. If he had not been petrified, Naruto would have chuckled at her antics. This girl is not right in the head, he thought, inwardly amused. Coriander took his unharmed hand in hers and squeezed it, but without putting too much force into it to not hurt him. She bowed her head and said, I was scared and confused at first because I suspected the worst when you said my parents sent you to rescue me. I mean, they've been dead for years. I thought you were trying to trick me. But I want to thank you. You killed my captors. Your fox friend told me that you even killed the scions who have imprisoned and experimented on me for years. I have etched this gratitude deep in my heart. No matter when or where, I will always be ready to repay you for it. Thank you. Coriander was a little startled when Naruto pulled his hand free from her grasp. She was even more surprised when his hand landed on her head. His hand was heavy and his palm and fingers were rough with calluses from a lifetime of wielding weapons. But it brought her a sense of gentleness like she had not felt in almost a decade, from the time when she was a young child, before her parents sold her out as a slave. She found herself leaning into his touch, taking comfort in that gentle head pat. However, that moment did not last long. After a few seconds, his hand became still and his one eye closed. Still tired, he fell asleep. Asterism. A planet reminiscent of a blue marble could vaguely be seen in the distance. Having just passed by planet Mars a few minutes ago, the Earth was now only 20 million miles away or so. Ever since she woke up, Coriander had tried to talk more with the owners of the ship. But the man was in terrible shape, bedridden and unconscious, while the talking fox appeared to be in an awfully bad mood, even worse than when they had just met and he hit her. Any attempt of her starting a conversation was shot down with a growl and a fierce glare from him. After the third time, the girl wisely decided to stay silent and let the angry fox have his peace and quiet. Nonetheless, the ship's destination was of great importance to her too, since she was aboard as well. When she realized that they were on their way back to Earth, she could not hold in her doubts and worries and said, why are we going back to Earth? Last time we went there they fought against me and they fought against your master too. They are not friendly. Kyuubi growled at her again. Naruto is not my master. He is my little brother. Coriander recoiled at the anger in the fox's voice and stood silent for a while. I'm sorry for my wrong assumption. Don't be angry at me anymore, please. The fox let out a low growl from his chest. I'm not angry at you, but I'll get pissed for sure if you don't shut your trap for a moment. We're going to Earth for asylum. They are not bad people deep inside, they're just morons. But it's exactly because they're morons that they will protect us from others. Now that you know why we go there, please keep quiet. The Tamaranine princess made herself small and did not say anything else. In her mind, however, she wondered why was the fox so mean and angry at her all the time. Does he hate me? Or maybe he hates everyone, or it could be that he's stressed because of his brother's condition. Kyuubi was, indeed, stressed out and very worried because of Naruto's condition, but that was not the only reason for his irascibility. The main reason for his bad mood was the massive amount of natural energy he had absorbed. While he had not gotten ill from all the natural energy that Naruto had pumped into him, he was a chakra beast, he did not have a normal, biological body, it had certainly amplified his rage and violent tendencies. After all, it had been a crazy amount of natural energy, so much that he had become even stronger and more immense than the 10-tailed beast, his progenitor, a god. In comparison to Kyuubi, who was a mindless beast, Kyuubi was handling his power much better, and he had absorbed so much chakra that he had become a planet-busting behemoth. In the present, although it took him all of his willpower to restrain his berserk emotions, he did keep himself somewhat calm and in control. But Coriander pestering him with questions was not helping his situation at all. that's why he snapped at her the way he did. It did not take long for the Almeration ship to reach the Earth and its moon. When they were about to enter the outer layer of Earth's exosphere, about 6,000 miles away from the planet, QB spoke to the AI of the computer in the control room. Activate the stealth mode. Roger. Stealth mode will be activated in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stealth mode activated. Based on the remaining fuel, the stealth mode can be sustained for 20 minutes, the AI's clear voice sounded. A light flickered on the exterior of the ship and, after a few seconds, it became almost invisible. A vague distortion of the space was the only trace left of it. It was the perfect camouflage technology. That's how they had bypassed the Watchtower's radars and senses 2 days ago as well when they came to capture Vandal Savage. The Almeration ship was about to enter the thermosphere of the planet when a very bright yellow light appeared seemingly out of nowhere and targeted it. Startled, QB used 2 of his tails to abruptly steer the ship away, performing a role that would have made even a professional pilot proud, managing to just barely dodge that yellow light. His efforts proved to be in vain, however, when the yellow light turned around and targeted their ship again, like a homing missile. This time, it was impossible to dodge it. But QB did not give up. One of his tails elongated and pressed a red button. Energy shield deployed. Shield capacity, 100%. Stealth mode deactivated, the AI announced. The fox growled in annoyance. The stealth mode being deactivated meant that the Justice League's watchtower would no doubt catch wind of their arrival, but it was still preferable to having their ship blown up by that weird yellow light missile. But the following scene greatly startled QB. The yellow light passed through the energy shield unhindered and then even through the thick glass of the control room's window without as much as making a hole or causing any type of damage. It was as though it was immaterial. The yellow missile headed straight to QB, who was in the pilot's seat. But now that it was right in front of his eyes and he could see it clearly, QB said in disbelief. What the hell? It was a power ring. A yellow power ring belonging to the Yellow Lantern Corps, led by Sinestro. They were not as well known as the Green Lanterns, but they were still infamous enough for QB to have heard of them in the past. The yellow power ring went straight to his right paw and enlarged enough that it fitted around it like a bracelet. An intense yellow light started to glow as it enveloped his body, and QB heard a voice coming from the ring. You have been chosen to wield a yellow power ring. QB, the nine-tailed demon fox. You will be subjected to psychological and physical reconditioning. You will be transported to. All the rage and anger that QB had been bottling up until then exploded. Don't screw with me, he roared, and a wave of crimson-red chakra burst out of his body. Psychological reconditioning. You think you can enslave me? You think I'd let anyone ever control me again? His size started to increase again and his entire body became covered in fire. The board of the ship and the supercomputer were melted in an instant and deafening alarms started ringing. The ship began to shake terribly because the computer that had been controlling everything was destroyed. The gravity generator stopped working and the atmospheric pressure in the ship started to decrease rapidly. The ship began to lose altitude at a breakneck speed, and it soon reached the lower layer of the thermosphere. Conflicting emotional resonance detected. Rage overpowering fear. Targeted sentient deemed unfit to. The voice coming from the ring abruptly stopped because, at that moment, the gorilla-sized nine-tailed fox smashed his fire-covered fists together. A crisp sound was heard and the yellow power ring was crushed into pieces. But QB did not let his rage cloud his mind any longer. Quickly getting a hold of himself, he turned and tried to grab the controls of the ship, except that there were no controls left to grab anymore. The entire board had been melted by his flames a few moments before. Just then, the ship began to shake even harder and the temperature rose at an alarming rate. They had entered the mesosphere. Their ship had caught on fire. Fucking hell. One disaster after another. QB cursed. He abandoned any hope of salvaging the ship. With no working computer and no controls to steer the ship while it was burning up from the friction with the atmosphere of the planet, not only that it was impossible to save the ship, but they would also be in danger of dying if they remained aboard when it collided against the Earth. Not him specifically, but the unconscious and half-turned to stone Naruto and the Tamaranine girl would definitely perish. He rushed out of the control room and ran straight to the living quarters. When he entered the bedroom, he saw Coriander protectively holding Naruto's kneeling statue-like body in her arms, to stop it from being smashed against the walls and the furniture as the ship was going down. Decisively, The now large fox wrapped two of his tails around the two of them and brought them closer to his body. A loud crash was heard when QB smashed his fist against the outer wall of the ship. Even despite his relatively small size at that moment, he was only as large as a silverback ape. His punch was so powerful that not only that it broke the wall, but the entire ship was smashed into several pieces. The three of them were hurled into the air, but with his 2 arms and 9 tails wrapped protectively around the unconscious and petrified Naruto and the Tamaranine princess, QB curled himself in a large ball of red fur, protecting them from all angles. Now, the ball of red fur started falling towards the ground like a meteorite. Wait, I can fly, Coriander shouted at the top of her lungs, trying to make herself heard over the intense winds and air pressure as they fell. QB's almost rabbit-like ears were not that long just for show. Though faintly, despite the roaring winds, he still heard what she said. He unfurled himself from his curled-up position, but he still kept 2 of his tails wrapped tightly around the 2 of them as they fell. A bright green light glowed in Coriander's eyes and around her hands, and her face became strained as she tried to stop the descent. What the hell, woman, you said you can fly. QB screamed when he saw that their falling speed was not decreasing at all. Coriander grabbed one of QB's large ears and yelled as loudly in it as she could. Make yourself smaller. You are too heavy. This brat. His ear was ringing now. He felt like wanting to smack her for what she had done. I'll definitely smack her when we get down. But in spite of his thoughts, he did return himself to his tiny form as a fox cub. Regardless, his arms and legs and his 9 tails still latched around Naruto's waist securely. He was preparing himself for the worst-case scenario. If the girl could still not stop them from falling, he would enlarge himself again and wrap Naruto in his tails protectively like before. For him, smashing against the ground from that altitude would be an annoyance at most. It was not enough to seriously hurt him. But he was worried about what the shock of their impact against the ground might do to Naruto while he was in his current state. For Naruto's sake, he preferred landing safely instead of making a crater in the ground with his body. Sure enough, after QB became a tiny fox cub, Coriander managed to stabilize themselves in the air easily. However, as they were currently in the mesosphere, it was extremely cold, way below the freezing temperature of the water. Holding the petrified form of the kneeling Naruto in her arms and the fox that was latching onto his waist with his tails like an octopus, Coriander dived headfirst towards the ground at a very high speed. But, as it was a controlled flight, QB did not worry. They were only around 20 miles above the ground, somewhere above the Indonesian archipelago, when a very large construct of green light in the form of a human hand stopped them in their flight. From behind them, a group of 5 people appeared, surrounding them from all sides. They were none other than Green Lantern, Superman, Hawkgirl, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, the 5 that could fly out of the 7 founding members of the Justice League. 2 days after the Jump City incident, the members of the Justice League were together in the Watchtower at the request of Superman. The mood in the conference room was stifling and unnatural. Batman seemed more taciturn than usual, Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter looked like they had a lot on their mind, and Wonder Woman appeared to be distracted, not fully focused on her peers. Flash was his usual easygoing self, but strangely enough for the rest of the JL members, Hawkgirl seemed to be in a great mood. Superman sat up from his seat and opened his mouth to say something, but Batman unexpectedly spoke first. Before you tell us the reason you called us, I'd like to say a few things. Looking back at what happened, I believe we could have avoided a fight with that alien mercenary. And it was all my fault. I want to apologize. Momentarily, the other 6 heroes were stunned. They had never seen Batman apologizing or admitting he was wrong about anything before, and they'd been together for about a year by then. Though no less startled than the others, Superman was the first to react. You did nothing wrong, Batman. It was the right. Please let me finish. Batman raised a hand and said. The truth is that we didn't need to start a fight against him right away. We could have tried to solve our issues with him diplomatically first. After all, he was not the violent type that couldn't be reasoned with. Quite the opposite, he tried to reason with us and avoid clashing against us. But I let my ego get the better of me that day and I endangered you all. I have no excuse for that. I would like to temporarily retire from the Justice League and... Superman interrupted him once again. Absolutely not. That's exactly the opposite of what we should be doing now. We have faced other powerful aliens before, but we stood united. Together, we could overcome them all. If we let just one setback break us apart, we will be doomed. Superman is right, Batman, Wonder Woman said. Don't beat yourself too hard. Everyone makes mistakes once in a while. But we are a team and we pick each other up from the ground when we fall. Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern nodded and Flash grinned and rushed behind Batman and put an arm around his shoulder as if they were best pals. Flash had expected for Batman to growl at him like usual for getting too close into his personal space, but, to his amazement, Batman did not as much as glare at him. For a moment, Flash even entertained the thought of asking, "Are you the real Batman?" But he wisely decided to not push his luck too much. "Today, I asked for everyone to be here because I wanted to talk to you about this. I am thinking of expanding the Justice League." At Superman's words, noises of surprise came from the other heroes in the room. Over the past year, we've been through some tough times together. The last incident, in particular, showed me that the Justice League could use more members, more manpower. There are only 7 of us and the Earth is a very big place. It also looks like the more our technology advances, for some reason, the more often we get into contact with aliens. We have to step up our game. Martian Manhunter, who had been silent until then, spoke. "I wholeheartedly agree with what you said, but we have to consider what would the government's reaction be. And not just the US government but the United Nations as well. The Justice League becoming too powerful will no doubt place a great amount of stress on them. Our decision to amass more power could be interpreted as hostile. We are already under the entire world's scrutiny." While the Justice League were discussing in detail the pros and cons of expanding their organization, a very loud alarm rang in the watchtower. They all stood up and rushed towards the control room, with Flash and Martian Manhunter being the first to arrive there. Asterism. 20 miles above the ground, somewhere above the Indonesian archipelago, a very large construct of green light in the form of a human hand stopped Coriander, QB, and the turned-to-stone Naruto in their flight. From behind them, a group of 5 people appeared, surrounding them from all sides. They were none other than Green Lantern, Superman, Hawkgirl, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, the 5 that could fly out of the 7 founding members of the Justice League. But when the Justice League got the chance to take a better look at him, they received a small shock. The turned-to-stone Naruto was terrible to look at. More than half of his body had become a statue and it had taken on a toad-like appearance. If it had not been for the tiny fox latching on from his waist and the red-haired alien girl holding them both and flying, they would have not recognized him. "Jesus, no wonder he used to wear a mask," Jon Stewart unknowingly blurted out, earning himself a glare from Hawkgirl and Superman. Green Lantern did a fake cough to pass over the moment and then a green light came out of his ring and encased everyone in a sphere. A deep demonic growl came from QB's and a crimson-red chakra started to bubble around his tiny body when the green construct of light appeared to have trapped them, but he did not immediately attack them. He could feel no negative emotions coming from the Justice League. Just a sense of cautiousness and fear. Green Lantern started by saying quickly, "We don't want to fight against you. I used my power ring just to isolate ourselves from the wind so we could talk." His words had merit because, at 20 miles above the ground, the roaring winds would have made it almost impossible for them to converse otherwise. "Why have you returned to Earth? And what in the world happened to him?" Superman asked. "Natural energy poisoning. We came back to Earth seeking asylum," QB said. "Why Earth of all the places?" Martian Manhunter asked. "Before coming to Earth 2 days ago, we had flown all the way from outside the 3,600 sectors of the universe. And then we flew straight to the Vega system. We didn't have enough fuel to reach a planet inhabited by sentient beings that were not in the middle of an intergalactic war or major civil unrest. Earth was the closest. QB could naturally talk to any sentient beings regardless of their language. However, that was not the case for Coriander. Besides the words of Green Lantern that had been automatically translated by his power ring, she could not understand a thing from what Superman, QB and the Martian said as they talked with each other. However, knowing QB's temper, she was getting increasingly anxious at the situation. She could feel that the fox was on the brink of blowing up at them. "We don't want any trouble. We just need a place to rest and heal up because our ship was destroyed," Coriander said. "What is the girl saying?" Superman asked Green Lantern to translate. "That their ship blew up and that they don't want any trouble." They momentarily stopped conversing amongst themselves because they realized that QB's situation was abnormal. "I sense a great amount of rage coming from the Fox alien. I would not be surprised if he attacked us at any moment. Stay on your guard. Martian Manhunter's voice sounded in everyone's mind. The others became alert at his words because they knew not to be deceived about the fox's currently tiny appearance. According to the information that Green Lantern had shared with them before, that tiny fox was capable of becoming a behemoth that destroyed a planet. They knew that they had to make a decision fast before things got out of hand. If we let you come to Earth, what guarantee do we have that you won't start killing people left and right? Wonder Woman suddenly asked. Diana, Hawkgirl and Superman attempted to stop her. They thought that asking such a blunt question was undoubtedly going to enrage the fox, and that was literally the last thing they wanted to do at that moment. To everyone's great surprise, however, at Wonder Woman's words, the crimson energy swirling around QB seeped back into his body and he visibly took on a calmer appearance. Listening to her mother's request, Wonder Woman had not told anyone yet that only the previous night she had become a demigoddess. That is to say that her powers were naturally stronger than before, including her affinity to nature and wild animals that Goddess Artemis had blessed her with. In addition, QB himself did not want to be angry and start a fight with anyone at that moment. Wonder Woman's influence helped him to restrain his volatile emotions and rage. The fox replied to her question in a much calmer voice than before, clearly more in control of himself. All I want is a place for my brother to recover. I have no intention of causing any trouble. As long as no one disturbs us, you have my word. Do this for us and we will owe you a favor. You should be well aware of what someone of our power owing you a favor means. As QB said, the Justice League was keenly aware of how important was a favor from Naruto and QB. But the question present in everyone's mind then was, can he be trusted? But even if they could not trust him, they did not really have a choice. The Justice League was not confident in regards to a fight against the Fox alien. Even more importantly, they had to think about the safety of the over 100 million people living in the archipelago of islands below, because unlike the first time around, they no longer underestimated QB. For all they knew, the Fox could easily blow up half the ocean in its rage. In the end, it looked like the current scenario was the best case possible, them coming to an agreement and the aliens even owing them a favor. Superman and Martian Manhunter looked at each other for a moment before they turned and nodded at Wonder Woman. Having realized that the Fox was more open to talking to her than anyone else, they let her speak for the Justice League. We agree to grant you asylum on our planet. We hope that you will not break your promise. But first, we'll take you to the Watchtower. Our medical equipment is better than what regular hospitals on Earth have. It's not something that medicine and science can fix. His condition and my rage are problems of a magical nature. But your presence feels calming. It's helping me focus. You feel different than before, QB said, his slit crimson eyes peering into Wonder Woman's eyes. The Amazon princess was secretly startled. I'm wearing the bracelets of submission. They're supposed to hide my true nature even from the gods. How did he feel it? It was Hawkgirl that spoke next. A friend of ours, Dr. Fate, is a great sorcerer. He may have a solution to your problem if it's of a magical nature. Inwardly, QB was a bit suspicious of their behavior. But he came to terms with it once he realized what the Justice League must be thinking at that moment. They're afraid of endangering the millions of people below. The Green Lantern Corps have surely found out about what we've done to the Scions by now, so most likely the Justice League is aware of my power now too. That's why they're so willing to talk now, eh? Well, no matter. It works for us. As if he knew exactly what QB was thinking about, Green Lantern spoke at that moment. We understand how dangerous you are and we don't want to risk a fight that would endanger the lives of the innocent people below. But even if the Justice League might not be enough to stop you, you should know that the Green Lantern Corps most certainly can. I will also let you know that the Guardians have already classified you as a universal level threat and they have their eyes on you. Green Lantern and QB looked into each other's eyes silently for a few seconds. As a green power ring wielder, Jon Stewart's willpower was strong enough to look into QB's crimson red eyes without flinching in fear. That fact alone earned the man a bit of respect in QB's mind. Just as you said you don't want any trouble, we don't want any either. I am telling you this so you know that we do have the ability to fight back. Unexpectedly, QB nodded at his words. I gave you my word. I'm not a human. I do not lie. Asterism. 2 weeks had passed since QB, Coriander, and the petrified Naruto had arrived on Earth and struck a deal with the Justice League. True to his promise, QB did not cause any incidents. Instead, he had spent most of his time sleeping, gradually eliminating the excessive berserk natural energy that he had previously absorbed. The Justice League had kept their word as well. Currently, a man dressed in a blue suit, a yellow cape and wearing a golden helmet was coming out of the Javelin together with Superman and another blonde-haired teen girl. Dr. Fate, you've arrived, Green Lantern said as a form of greeting before raising an eyebrow and asking Superman, what's she doing here? A helpless expression appeared on Superman's face. She's been pestering me every day over the past 2 weeks to take her up to the Watchtower. Meet my cousin, Kara Kent. Kara, this is John Stewart, a Green Lantern. But the girl in question was too busy ogling at her surroundings to notice the annoyance in Superman's voice. Nice to meet you, she said in a chirpy voice before taking flight, starting her exploration. She's quite a handful, Green Lantern remarked. You don't know half of it, Superman said and sighed. Despite his sighing and the tone of his voice, there was a smile on his face as he looked at Supergirl who was zooming around with no care in the world. Shall we go? Dr. Fate said from the side. The three men walked towards the hospital wing of the Watchtower. When they arrived in front of the room where Naruto slept, Dr. Fate was the only one who stepped inside. Superman and Green Lantern remained outside, watching through the window. Sensing the newcomer's presence in the room, QB woke up from his slumber and opened his eyes. He had been sleeping on Naruto's chest, curled up and purring just like a cat. Hard to believe a fox as adorable as that is as dangerous as you say it is, Supergirl said when she came next to Superman and looked through the window just in time to see QB arching his back and stretching his tiny limbs as he yawned. That adorable fox can turn into a half-a-mile-long monster and blow up a planet. Appearances can be very deceiving, Green Lantern said. Supergirl stuck her tongue at his words, making Superman chuckle and ruffle her hair with his hand. So he is the one who saved me from Argo? She asked and looked at the sleeping Naruto with undisguised curiosity. Whoa, are those whiskers? Why didn't you tell me how cute he was? Superman palmed his forehead, feeling the beginning of a headache. He used to wear a mask. I couldn't see through it even with my X-ray vision. And if you saw him when he came back 2 weeks ago, you wouldn't think he was cute. He looked like a half-human, half-frog. It was only a few days ago that his face returned to normal. At least what we think it's his normal appearance. It was the 5th time Dr. Fate came to the Watchtower to cure Naruto. Living up to his name as the owner of the Helmet of Fate and one of the greatest sorcerers in the world, Dr. Fate did manage to alleviate some of the effects of the poisonous natural energy in Naruto's body and speed up his innate regeneration ability. Because of that, the stone and toad-like appearance of his face reverted to his original looks. His petrified leg had been turned back to normal as well. Only one of his arms was still petrified. By the way, who is that girl? Following the direction that Supergirl was pointing at, Superman and Green Lantern noticed Coriander who was sitting on a sofa in the room, not far from where Naruto's bed was. The red-haired girl was focused on the PSP in her hands, busily pressing its buttons. She's the girl that caused that big commotion in Jump City 2 weeks ago. Apparently, the Scions have destroyed her homeworld, Tamaran. Myself and Wonder Woman are the only ones who can communicate with her, she doesn't know our language. Green Lantern said. Supergirl grabbed the handle of the door and was about to go in but Superman stopped her. Don't go in there or that fox will beat you up good if you barge in, Flash felt that on his own skin. That fox doesn't like anyone else besides Dr. Fate and Wonder Woman. Supergirl made a bummed out sound. I can see why he'd like Dr. Fate, he's curing his friend's condition. But why does he like Wonder Woman? Green Lantern shrugged his shoulders. Beats me. Something to do with the blessing she received from the Greek gods, I guess. But I can't help thinking that something is different about her these days. You've noticed that Superman? Or I'm just overthinking things. Superman nodded. I can't put my finger on what exactly is going on either, but she does look like she has something on her mind. Though Wonder Woman had always been rather serious and kept most things to herself, the rest of the Justice League had noticed the subtle changes in her after the Jump City incident. She became more introverted, she talked less than before and she looked like she always had some pressing problems on her mind. Also, her hero costume had changed as well. Oblivious to what Superman and Green Lantern were worried about, Supergirl knocked on the window and then started waving her hands, attracting the attention of Coriander who was playing on her PlayStation Portable. Coriander tilted her head in curiosity at the blonde girl who was making her signs to come over. She looks friendly, Coriander thought, and her face was brightened by a smile. Over the past 2 weeks, she had started to feel cooped. Granted, it was nowhere near as bad as the years that she had spent in prison, but it was a fact that she was bored. Seeing a girl of her age apparently trying to make friends with her naturally piqued her interest. Leaving her PSP on the sofa, the Tamarani princess came out of the room. "Hello, I'm Coriander. What's your name?" she said and raised her hand for a handshake. She's saying hello and that her name is Coriander. She's asking you to introduce yourself, Green Lantern explained. Supergirl shook the redhead's hand and a bright smile appeared on her face. "I'm Kara. It's nice to meet you." But Supergirl's smile became a little stiff when Coriander seemed like she did not want to let go of her hand even after like 5 seconds passed. Suddenly, she was pulled. "What?" she began to say, but, before she could react, a soft feeling came from her lips, as Coriander kissed her on the mouth, muffling her words. Supergirl backed away with a small shriek and a hand covering her mouth. Her eyes were wide and her cheeks were burning red in disbelief and embarrassment. "Did I startle you? I'm sorry. My people have the ability to learn any language through the act of kissing. You stole my first kiss." Supergirl yelled in embarrassment, pointing a quivering accusatory finger at her. "You look rattled. Perhaps it felt bad for you. I quite enjoyed it. Your lips are very soft and they taste sweet. Did you eat strawberries before?" Coriander said. At her words, Supergirl gave up all pretense and just buried her face in her palms. Only her beet red ears could be seen. Coriander kissing Supergirl had been so out of the blue that Superman and Green Lantern were still watching the scene frozen. They had totally not expected something like that. Asterism. "You really helped me out a lot, Dr. Fate," Naruto said. "Without your aid, it would have taken me around 2 months to recover up to this stage." The man in question was sitting on a stool next to Naruto's bed. His slouched posture and his laborious breathing betrayed how exhausted he was. "I did it for the people of Earth. If it's in my power, I will naturally do something about it. It is in my interest as well for peace to be preserved." Naruto sighed at his words. You guys are treating us like ticking bombs. But I would never hurt innocents for no reason." Dr. Fate replied. "You mean to say there were no innocents on the planet that you and your fox have destroyed?" A low growl came from Kyubi, who was now sitting on Naruto's shoulder like he had used to do in the past. Naruto weakly brought his good hand up to pat him on the head and tell him to relax. "I have no regrets about annihilating the Scions. There were no children or innocents among them. Only insane bastards who had taken over an entire system and took advantage of the Green Lantern Corps' preferential treatment to them and their pact of non-aggression to enslave and kill whomever they pleased in the Vega system. Over the hundreds of millions of years that the Scions had lived, countless have died at their hands. Even so, I would have not attacked them just for that. I don't get involved in others' problems needlessly, and I certainly don't do it for free. But they targeted me. They bribed my information broker and then lured me into their territory with 2 very well-paid bounties, enough money that I could even buy a terraformed moon, all that so they could capture me. A fleet of almost 40 interstellar warships waited for me when I reached Tamaran. Though we easily dispatched of them, I knew that the Scions would never give up on me, especially after learning that I am powerful enough to annihilate a fleet of warships. I would have probably ended up on one of the dissection tables too at some point if I didn't kill them all first. After all, I can't always be on my guard. I am human too, not a god. I'm not invincible. You're human too, was what Dr. Fate thought in his mind and had the urge to ask but chose to stay silent and listen to what he had to say. He realized that it was a very rare occasion to find more about the alien's motivation and inner thoughts. A chance to see how his mind worked. There were 87 prisoners locked up in the labs of the Scions. Through the special abilities granted to me by this energy that you've helped me remove from my body, I could sense every single living being on the planet and the nature of their character. I could even get a peek into their thoughts with it. Naruto looked down seemingly deep in thought. I'm not happy about the deaths. If I could have saved them, I would have done it. But after a lifetime of traveling through the universe, I learned 2 simple truths. Being kind to your enemies is being cruel to yourself, and that the world we live in is not such a pretty place where everyone can live happily ever after. 87 people died as collateral damage. But I ensured my own safety, and I've also prevented hundreds of thousands or even more people that would have been captured and killed in the future by the Scions. I have liberated an entire system from their tyranny as well. Do you know that on over 20 planets in the Vega system, hundreds of races have celebrated the day when the Scions died as the day of liberation? On many of those planets, they even erected statues of Kurama, and it looks like cults focused on worshipping him have started being formed. If Dr. Fate was silent before due to wanting to hear more about Naruto's thoughts, this time he became speechless because of what he heard. I see, people are finally realizing how great I am. It was about damn time if you ask me. Ha ha ha. But why is this the first time I heard about it? QB said, his lazy appearance from before a stark contrast with how he was wagging his tails in excitement now. I bought this information from a news agency after I finally got my face back to normal a few days ago, Naruto said with a chuckle and tapped his wristwatch-like device. I wanted to know what had become of the Vega system after what we have done there. He turned his attention back to Dr. Fate and said, I'm not a psychopath or a ticking bomb that could explode at any moment. Believe it or not, I used to be no different than you and the Justice League when I was young. I was called a hero by my people, I've saved many lives. Even after my homeworld perished, I continued to carry those noble ideals and aspirations for many years. But time and tribulations change everything. In the present, in your and the Justice League's eyes, I'm probably just a deranged alien with more power than a man should have. He laughed bitterly. It's funny, isn't it? You either die young as a hero or live long enough to see yourself becoming the villain. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.